This table I have taken from Deep Excavation Theory and Practices book of Chang Yu O. And here you can see how different types of embedded retaining walls are selected based on soil type, sealing and stiffness, construction conditions, excavation depth, construction period, and budget. So if you see soldier pile wall, then these dots inside a circle represent good, the blank circle represent acceptable, cross represents not good. So if you see soldier pile wall, so it is a very good option for, if you see from budgetary view. So it is very cheap, installation process is very quick. Steel sheet piles also, they are very quick. They are also very economical. These are not good for excavating the greater depth. Again, these are not, the soldier pile wall is not good to retain water. Sealing. Now, for gravelly soil, for soft clay, soldier pile wall is not good. Steel sheet pile wall, if you see steel sheet pile wall, then it is good. I mean, they can be used for soft clays. Sealing is very good, as I told earlier. Noise and vibration, if driven into soil by a static vibrating process, then noise and vibration can be reduced. So there is a special note written uh, in the point 2, you can see. If you see the diaphragm wall, then it is good for any type of soil. Okay. Now sealing and stiffness is also very good. Noise and vibrations, you can also contain noise and vibration. But if you see underground obstruction, then it is, I mean, where soldier pile wall is a very good to isolate the utility point. Diaphragm wall is not a good option. It is very good to excavate to a larger extent. Construction period, it takes much time because the installation itself is a complex thing, and the machinery, required machinery is, the setup is very. Design guidelines and international codes, we generally prefer Series C 580, Series C 760, Eurocode 7 to design a embedded retaining wall. If we talk about design, then the whole design is based on lateral earth pressure theory. So if we, what happens if we use inappropriate earth pressure theory? So an inappropriate choice of earth pressure theory may either result to an uneconomical design or even to an unsafe design. Here in this picture, in this photograph, you can see how it shows you wall deformation. This is general profile of how a cantilever wall deforms. And here you can see earth pressures, active earth pressure and passive earth pressure. I assume you are already, the audience is already familiar with these kind of terminologies. Due to time restraint, I cannot go into the details, but simply active earth pressure causes wall to deform, and the passive earth pressure supports the. So comparison of Rankine's and Coulomb's earth pressure theories. So Rankine and Coulomb's earth pressure theories are alike. That means it gives similar result under similar conditions. So what are those similar conditions? Smooth wall surface, level ground, and homogeneous, cohesionless soils. Rankine's earth pressure and Coulomb's theory, there are some differences also. The major difference is point number 3, unable to consider the adhesion or friction between retaining walls. So Rankine's earth pressure theory doesn't consider any adhesion or friction between the retaining walls and soil, whereas Coulomb's theory take into consideration the friction between retaining wall and soil. Coulomb's earth pressure theory can be used in cohesionless soils, whereas Rankine's earth pressure theory can be used, can be applied to both cohesive as well as cohesionless soil. Now, the principle of Rankine's earth pressure theory is based on the plasticity equilibrium of strained soil. That means failure surfaces are infinite, whereas Coulomb's earth pressure theory is based on force equilibrium. That means only one failure surface. Yeah, I mean, the major difference is that the Rankine's earth pressure theory is unable to consider the adhesion or friction between retaining walls, whereas Coulomb's theory does consider the friction between retaining walls. Now see page. Before I start seepage, I just want to tell that dewatering is required for lowering the groundwater level in an excavation region, wherever groundwater table is above the final excavation level. As you can see in the photograph here, here groundwater table, this is the groundwater table, it is just below the ground surface. So to achieve this kind of excavation, we need to dewater the ground as continuously as the excavation proceeds. So the purpose of dewatering is to lower the groundwater table in the excavation region. The goal of lowering the groundwater level is to keep the excavation bottom dry to prevent leakage of water or sand, to avoid sand boiling or upheaval, and to anticipate the occurrence of floating basement. So this is why we generally do dewatering. Seepage, we also need to do a seepage analysis whenever we are designing such kind of problem. Whenever we are doing a numerical modeling, we need to consider seepage. Why? Because cohesionless soils have a high degree of permeability. As a result, the difference of the water levels between the excavation bottom and the area outside the excavation in cohesionless soils will cause seepage. Seepage affects the water pressure and effective stresses both inside and outside the excavation zone. Here I have also attached some photographs which is from Plaxis analysis. You can see how groundwater table is lowering here. If you see the third photograph, then you can see how water from near section where you can see loads are near to the D wall and how groundwater table is lowering. So whenever you are performing a numerical model, you need to consider seepage also. So seepage analysis generally consists of transient and steady state analysis. It is a normal routine work in design exercise. Stability checks. So whenever we are designing a D wall or any kind of embedded retaining wall, we have to do stability checks. There are generally three types of stability checks. Stability checks for shear failure, sand boiling, and upheaval. So first we'll start with shear failure. Shear failure, then when the shear stress at a point in soil exceeds or equals the shear strength of soil at the point is in the failure state or limiting state. This is the main principle how the whole principle has been made. So shear failure can be push in or kick out. As you can see in the picture, how the toe has been pushed in or kicked out. So what happens is, if we do proper analysis, then we generally attain a certain embedment depth up to which the wall has to be embedded. So by that we can avoid kick out failure. Talking about basal heave, basal heave, basal heave arises weight of the soil outside the excavation zone exceeding the bearing capacity of the soil below excavation bottom, causing the soil to move and the excavation bottom to heave so much that the whole excavation collapses. So this is what the major theory of basal heave. Analysis is done by three types of method: bearing capacity method, negative bearing capacity method, and slip circle method. The third check is sand boiling. Sand boiling is an issue of the stability of excavation in the sand under high groundwater level condition. We generally prefer a factor of safety of 1.5 whenever we are doing a check against sand boiling. You can see upheaval here. If you see the photograph, an impermeable layer is in between two permeable layers. Okay, so if below the excavation surface there exists a permeable layer underlying an impermeable layer, the impermeable layer has a tendency to be lifted by water pressure from the permeable layer. We generally prefer a factor of safety of 1.2. So how we can contain this kind of instability? Relieve wells and dewatering may reduce the pressure due to uptake. So what is soil structure interaction? Soil structure interaction is whenever we are doing soil structure interaction, it is advanced numerical analysis largely based on finite element method And the aim is that the theoretical requirements are achieved, that is the stability, equilibrium, and constitutive relationships, to include a realistic soil constitutive model. So the choice of soil constitutive model itself is a big task, to incorporate proper boundary conditions, consider complex construction sequence, and account for the effects of time and development of pore water. So the most important point here is consideration of complex construction sequences. So whenever we are using programs like Plaxis or RS2 or anything, the complex construction sequences, we have to model it as the sequence is going in reality. There are different types of methods in advanced numerical modeling. I guess you people might be familiar about limit equilibrium method, then pseudo finite element method, finite element, and finite difference method. So examples are of limit equilibrium methods are Stawal and Reward. And pseudo finite element method, the most important example is Wallach, which is generally used. In finite element method comes Plaxis, finite difference method comes flat. So if we compare all these things, then there are some advantages as well as the disadvantages which we need to know. If we talk about limit equilibrium method, then the input parameters are very less. It needs only soil strength, whereas Plaxis is a very complex program. It needs complex soil model, which can represent variation of stiffness with strain and anisotropy. Wallap, on the other hand, it needs elastic solid. The soil is modeled as elastic solid with soil stiffness matrices calculated as a finite element program. Limit equilibrium is simple. Wallap or pseudo-finite element methods are relatively straightforward, but Plaxis can be time-consuming because, as I told, the modeling itself is a complex thing. Because Plaxis or finite element methods, they usually need extensive or high quantity of data, and we have to model it exactly. That's why it is a relatively complex operation. Limit equilibrium is 2D only, pseudo-finite element method, Wallap and all, these are 2D only. But we can carry 2D as well as 3D analysis if we go with finite element method or finite difference method. Limit equilibrium method takes no account of pre-activation stress, whereas the other two takes. Limit equilibrium method does not calculate deformations. This is the most important point. Wall movement are calculated, but ground movements are around the wall are not calculated. That means settlements are not calculated if we go with wall. Wall and ground movements are computed. Limit equilibrium method does not model solid structure interaction, wall stability and construction sequence, whereas full solid structure and interaction can be modeled using both finite, pseudo-finite element as well as finite element or finite difference. These are the general input parameters of soil which are required for limit equilibrium, pseudo-finite element as well as infinite element methods. You can see the most general parameters are bulk unit weight, which is required for all the methods. And in situ earth pressure coefficient is not required in limit equilibrium but required in others. Soil strength parameters like total stress, effective stress, these are required for both ultimate and serviceability limit state for all these methods. And some special input parameters are required depending upon analytical model which we have adopted. Like in finite element method, if we go with complex models like strain hardening and all, then some more are required, some more input parameters are required. So the purpose of numerical modeling is to obtain an adequate retaining wall system against geotechnical failure, then to obtain structural forces like shear forces, bending moment, axial forces, which are again used for structural sizing of struts or even the retaining wall. Soil structure interaction results like horizontal wall movement of the retaining wall, vertical settlement around the ground, seepage analysis, etc. Then lastly, to predict the mode of geotechnical failure, hence to obtain the critical failure of mechanism governing the design. Here are some pictures of Plaxis analysis, which is performed. Above two photos, you can see The first one is the deformed mesh. It is exaggerated view of how the structure has deformed. The second photo in the right shows the total displacement. If you read it carefully, you will find that minus 0.047, that means around 47 settlement has occurred. The legend shows that minus 40 to 50 This is the region where the structure is rested on the ground. The maximum settlement has occurred. The red sign shows positive displacement, that means upheaval. The bottom three photographs are bending moment. No, sorry, total displacement. This one is the total displacement, 46 And this is the shape of deformation. Since it was a cantilever structure with not a cantilever structure, actually roof slab is there at the top. So deformation is restricted at the top, but it is more in the central part. Bending moment profile is this. You can see a sharp increase after the base slab part. Then again, at the roof slab part, the bending moment profile is going to a negative part. Then here comes the shear force diagram. These force envelopes are used for structural sizing. So our structural engineers, what they do is they take these inputs and they design the detail model. Now picture gallery, how this all things started is in 1890s when the first cut and cover trench project started for Metropolitan Railway in London. So you can see how the whole engineering part started. The trenches were dug first, then shores or timber pipes were used as shoring element of struts, and this kind of temporary strut arrangement was used to dig the most famous London Underground network. So this is a very legendary photo, how all of this started, engineering, underground engineering was all. This is Victoria and Albert Museum. This is again from London, and this is a very famous building, a historical building. There is a museum also. Skeletons of dinosaurs have been kept here over here. Struts are used to restrict the ground movement and support the structure. Very beautiful photographs. You can see excavators working. They are still working, and is almost they have reached till the final excavation level. This is Aldgate Palace, 6.5 deep basement in tight London site. Here also you can see many skyscrapers just beside the excavation perimeter, and a beautiful arrangement of struts just to restrict the ground movement in a very tight London site. This is a new Palace of Justice building in Kuwait. Similar, you can see that excavation is just beside the building, and it is a very, the engineering temporary structure is a very competitive task. It is very risky if you don't plan your excavation, if you don't do a correct design, soil modeling, everything is very important. St. Paul's Cathedral, again you can see a secant arrangement. This is a very beautiful photograph of Thames Tideways embankment for project. 16.5 meter deep intersection chamber is there using struts and veiler beams. Thank you.